That's a good
top
way.
of the hill and then,
That's the way.
Did you walk over, Mike?
yeah, I walk a lot if I can.
Thank you. Well, I would like to thank OpenGov for giving us a little tour of their software today. Thank you, David Spoladaro, and your colleague Eric. I missed his last name.
Eric DiProspero.
Prospero. Have worked with you for some time now, getting a clearer picture of what OpenGov has to offer in terms of budgeting, planning, and performance management, as well as citizen engagement. It's been a wonderful journey. Thank you for the time that you've devoted to educating us about what your company has to offer.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you having us up tonight. It's been a pleasure working with you all, and it's been an extremely informative few months learning how, hopefully we can partner together and bring some value with what we're doing to what you're trying to do here in the city of Plattsburgh. So I just want to be able to make sure that will show my screen. I think we just have to, Eric, you know how to get that So tonight, just to give everybody, there are obviously a few people here, Mayor Reed and Rochelle and Rich, among others, that we've been having conversations with over the past few months.
Well, let me introduce you to the council. Maybe we could just go down the row. These are the councilors, and I'll see, I think you've already met the Chamberlain and the clerk. So go ahead, gentlemen.
Mike Kelly, Ward 2.
Peter Ensel, Ward 4.
Jeff Moore, Ward 6.
Hey, how are you? Well, let me introduce myself as well to the folks that haven't met me. So my name's Dave Spoladoro. I've been with OpenGov for almost about a year now. Public sector is not new to me. By training, I really spent the majority of my career working for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and a number of different finance and accounting roles. I ended my time before making this career transition as a controller for a small state authority. And what's really great about OpenGov is that it really would have changed the way that I did my day-to-day work, getting reports ready for my executive and board. And so I'm hoping that I can show a little bit of that functionality today, and hopefully I've been part of that over the last few months. So Eric, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good evening. Eric DiProspero, Regional Director here for the East Coast at OpenGov. Been with the company for about 3 years. I've had the opportunity to work with our small town and village customers, all the way up through folks like the City of Boston, FDNY, some of our larger customers as well. So I bring the perspective of other cities similar to Plattsburgh from across the region and across the East Coast, and I'm happy to share with you guys our experiences today as well.
Wonderful.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Eric.
Thank you.
And our Director of Community Development just walked in, Matt Miller. This is David and Eric from OpenGov.
Hey Matt,
Hello.
how are you, sir?
Good, how are you?
Great. So I'll just give a brief overview of how, we obviously want to make this interactive and answer all the questions that the council and others may have. For the folks that I haven't been working with these last few months, I was going to give a very brief overview of OpenGov, who we are as a company, and kind of what we do. And from there, jump right into the platform, highlight some of the things that we've been talking about these past few months, and how we can bring some value to Plattsburgh. And from there, we'll open up to questions and go from there. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
Wonderful. So, for those of you that don't know OpenGov, we are a budgeting and performance cloud. So OpenGov it's actually a really cool story. We actually were founded out of the 2008 financial crisis. Our founder was working out with some grant funding out in California, and he was working with cities and towns in California that were having a really difficult time, and among a lot of reasons, one of them was outdated technology. And from that kind of experience grew OpenGov. So we are 100% on a mission to power more effective and accountable government, and our focus is solely on municipalities, cities and towns. We're not out there talking to healthcare providers or anybody else. We've been built from the ground up for the business that you're doing. Our environment is extremely innovative. We're headquartered out in Silicon Valley, and we've got some tremendously talented technical people behind the scenes that have built this platform and are still building this platform. And we're actually now, we're partnered with a lot of folks, and we are the market leader in multi-tenant SaaS software. So we're growing exponentially. As I mentioned, we are in all 50 states, partnering with over 2,000 public sector organizations. What's really cool about OpenGov, I mentioned I kind of came from the public sector. We have tremendous amount of government expertise. The folks who are working on the design, the build out of our platform, these are folks who are ex-finance directors, ex-budget managers, ex-community relations, public information officers. So we've got combined, well over 200 years of public sector experience of the folks that are helping to drive this platform. And now this is actually the last slide before we jump in, because I think this does a good job of visually explaining what OpenGov actually does. So if you can imagine the bottom of this slide here, excuse me, if you imagine the bottom of this slide here is your different data sources throughout the town. Now, of course, your Munis accounting system is going to be the main source of data, but there's all these other outliers, whether they're Excel spreadsheets or in some other data silo somewhere. What OpenGov does is we unify all that data into one consolidated platform. And in that platform, you do a couple of key things. So the first to the left side is budgeting and planning. So what we're talking about is we want to get you out of Excel, get your department heads out of your ERP accounting system, and we want to give them a very easy to use, collaborative, and more importantly, transparent budgeting process that can be monitored by the city management, okay? And that includes from build out of your budget to planning for your workforce salary and benefits to the publication of your budget book. We can help you at every step of the process. The other part of that is kind of the day-to-day, we call operational performance. That's to kind of give those key data points, reports, metrics to the people that need them without having to wait and go through the accounting office or go through the Chamberlain's office. So we want to give everybody the information they need with live data. And again, it goes to transparency. The city management can kind of see everybody's looking at the appropriate reports at any given time. Now finally, there's the citizen engagement piece. Now this is about telling your story to the community. Now we're not about just let's put a bunch of data out there, because as you know, that's going to just cause more questions than it's going to answer. So what we do is we allow you to control what data and what level of data that you release out to the community, and we allow you to do it in a narrative manner. So it's about controlling the narrative and educating the community as to why you're making certain decisions, and then here's the data points that support those decisions behind it. Does that make sense? All right, if there aren't any questions on kind of what we do, I'm going to jump right into the platform.
So as Dave was highlighting, and he's pulling things up, there's an internal component of OpenGov and there's a public-facing component. And what we'll do is we'll kind of walk you through from the perspective of the annual budget process. So collaboratively building the annual budget here with input from all the department heads and stakeholders, looking at your different scenarios and analysis, planning for projects, planning new workforce, publishing the budget document, then kind of moving to the day-to-day piece, and then show how you can seamlessly go from creating the budget to tracking it and managing it, and then to opening it up to the public to better engage with them and be more transparent, all in one comprehensive platform.
Great. So what you're looking at right now is OpenGov's landing page for our internal budget development tool. Okay, so this is something that we're looking at this in the view of a mayor, city councilor, Chamberlain, who's going to have oversight of the entire budgeting process. So as you notice when you come into this screen, the most important thing is that you can see the overarching view of all of your proposals for that particular budget. Now, we're looking at an example of just a regular, operating budget, But that's not to say that's what you're limited to. We want you to do your capital budgeting with OpenGov. We want you to do as many what-if scenarios as you want to do in OpenGov. You're not limited in any way, shape, or form. You can have an unlimited amount of these budgets. And you can memorialize them over the years as well in OpenGov. So as you can see here, you have an overarching view of all the proposals. And you can there's some great information here. So you can see what's in progress, what's been submitted, who hasn't started their budget proposal yet. You can see who's working on it, and then some top line information of what that particular proposal is going to do to the budget. Is this going to give us a big deficit? Is this going to be neutral or what? So, for an example, I am just going to go into one of these to show you what a proposal looks like internally. And this would be for maybe your police department. So when your police chief goes in, instead of going into your ERP system, we're doing this in Excel and doing a lot of data entry, he would come in here and he would have an opportunity to put whatever his narrative is around why he's making this budget request. And this is what this screen shows you here. Now you can put supportive documents up. And if you do notice, the balance window has changed. Now it's only calculating based on this proposal amount. So you can see this is, we're going to have to cover almost $20 million of expenses in this police department proposal. Now, without getting too deep here, I want to just show you the main tab here, which is your expenses. When you go into your expense tab, what's great is that you're able to split out your subsets of expenses how you want to, whether you'd like to split operations from salaries or one-time expenses. We give you the flexibility to do that. But from a department head standpoint, we're actually going to be saving them a lot of time and increase kind of the visibility through the process. Because when they go in, they're not going to have to go in and they're going to have all the information right in front of them, and they're not going to have to go in and do a lot of data entry. So you can see that these are all of the operating accounts associated with the police department. And we have some information like prior year actuals through the years for your gasoline and oil expenditures. And then kind of your base, which is the starting point. Think of it as your last approved budget, which is what most people use. The only thing that we're asking your department heads to actually fill in is what is the proposal adjustment that they want to ask for the coming year, okay? And we give them a lot of flexibility as to how to do that, whether it's by percentage increases or flat amounts. You can itemize your expenses if you want to really go down to the transactional level as well, okay? So this is the only data that we're actually asking your department heads to fill in.
Can I interrupt?
Please do.
I'm struggling because I mean, I've seen these before, so it's not as important to me, but I'm wondering how everybody else is doing. It was a larger screen when you were showing it to us earlier.
Colin, can we fully cover the,
I don't know, you can try, I'm just monitoring to make sure it also
Yeah, I
comes
can-
up on YouTube.
right, I'm
That
just
might be
wondering if we
another way
can,
to do
I mean, for us internally, we don't have to have the feed on the screen,
You can give it a
as
try.
long as,
Yeah, I just don't see that we're gonna be able to follow you unless we get a larger
Understood.
screen.
I can zoom in on my screen as well.
Okay,
Is that
There we
better? You want me
go.
to zoom a little bit more from?
there, that's good.
Okay. Perfect. So what you're seeing here, these are all just to back up one step, these are all the accounts that are associated with the police department's operating expenses to the left here. You can see what fund it's coming out of, you can see all the prior year information, and then you're asking your department head simply to put in their adjustment. Now again, they can do this based off percentages, flat dollar amounts. They can do this based off of itemizations. So if you want to actually itemize to the specific transaction, you can do that. And what's really cool is that every line carries a description as well, and you can see here is the adjustment amount. It's a big decrease of that line item, and then here is the proposal over here. Okay? Is everybody following?
So one of the really cool things about OpenGov is each of our over 2,000 customers is set up uniquely in the platform. So when you all come on board with us, We actually will mirror the chart of accounts coming out of Munis today in OpenGov, so that whether you're creating budget requests, dashboards, reports, it's done on the truthful financial structure here of the city. It's not a one-size-fits-all type of solution. And then as you know, Dave is highlighting, this really brings the budgeting process to life, right? So we're at the department level right now, and we see that live summary on the left-hand side. So as things are actually keyed in, that's updating in real time. So one of the great byproduct that we hear from customers is they're actually allowing their departments to reshuffle some of their own funds inside of their department. So stretching their budget dollars a little bit further. So just because something was, and then in terms of actually having prior year reference years, whether it's actual expenditures or the prior year budgets, just because something was $100,000 last year doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be $100,000 or an increase going forward. It allows your departments to think very critically about the budget and think more kind of strategically overall for the city.
Great.
Yeah,
So-
that would be nice.
Yeah. So obviously, a very large part of your budget is going to be, or the largest part are going to be your salaries and your workforce costs, okay? So OpenGov, actually, this is a real differentiator of what we do that other folks just don't have the ability to do, is that we have a workforce module, which I've just pulled up right now, which allows you to enter in, it will pull in your entire workforce, and we can manage all your bargaining units, including grade and step increases, cost of living adjustments, and everything else that's unique to specific subsets of employees or specific bargaining units. And what's great is we can automatically calculate that and prorate it and have it flow directly into the appropriate budget line item. So that takes your workforce plans out of the departmental hands, and it really gives it to the folks who should be doing it, which is your chamberlain, your mayor. It allows you to have a lot of what-if scenario planning as well. So this is the workforce screen. You can see you have all your positions, and you determine what accounts they'll flow to.
I'm sorry,
Please.
I don't mean to, now if you clicked on the individual employee or position, that would give you the breakdown individually of salary, overtime,
Absolutely. Yep.
And this is
and
all-
that year to date, and can it go,
I don't see
As-
overtime, where is that?
This is a
No
budget.
overtime right
This
here.
is an actual.
Oh, this
Yeah.
is an actual, okay.
This is, what the
That's
total
just
cost
the
for
breakdown of his
position.
salary.
that position would be overtime,
Yeah.
benefits,
Yeah.
and so
And this is
on.
what the actuals would be.
Right, and would it be able to do a comparison year to year, previous years, or for that individual, then,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes.
So
how would
actually,
you code in post-employment cost to the city for an individual?
So, to talk a little bit about how the workforce planning or its personnel budgeting, what it works for us is, we take the entire authorized position list for the city, whether it's a filled or vacant position, then we take all the individual cost elements, which are basically the attributes that make up your people costs, right? And then it's basically a rules engine that says, and again, this is all unique to Plattsburgh. And there's a rules engine that says, hey, this is this position, and this is their dental, this is their, or any allowance that they have, if they're part of any labor bargaining units, and that's where you see that total projected cost coming into play. So if you were to actually bump up the base wage, and there's other dependencies against that, it's actually gonna all update in real time.
so I'll just
But
show
if
you
somebody's 5 years away from retirement, and the city hasn't each year been putting enough money, any money aside for their retirement health care, how would your program anticipate how much the city's gonna be paying in
That
5 years'
individual.
time, discounted to today, so we understand any decisions in that position today? How would you do that, set that up?
Yeah, so you're talking about retirement liabilities, tracking that.
Yeah, GASB 45 stuff,
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. So we can get a little bit more information on that, but one of the things you can do here is you have multiple workforce plans. So for example, if you want to gear a workforce plan that was specifically towards tracking kind of the post-employment benefits of your either current retirees or, like you said, maybe the ones that are coming up in the next 3 to 5 years, you can track that on a separate workforce plan. And again, so for example, we're very flexible on how you calculate what we call those cost elements. They're just the benefits. So you can get you can put in any type of cost elements that you want for your retirement liabilities, and it will calculate and add that up, and you can do kind of scenario planning off of that. Does that make sense?
So you would have some sort of module for all that works with this program where we could adjust the parameters like age, years to retirement, expected lifetime, et cetera, discount rate.
Yeah, so there's effective, start dates, end dates, those types of things, and then,
COLAs, COLA.
and then you can do even your, while this is budgeting for the next fiscal year, you can even do your 5-10-year projections on top of that.
So somebody mentioned COLA. Basically, you can have multiple COLA rates. They're determined based on the contract. So maybe you'd have COLA police and 4 or 5 others for your other bargaining units. Whatever the COLA rates are, they're managed right here through this table. You can see this, we've consolidated everybody on this one table. And then depending on which employee is hooked up to that cost element, the system's smart enough to automatically calculate based on these rates. So that's kind of how the system works.
And this is in speaking with Richard, this is going to be a pretty big enhancement because some of the current technology that's in place today is a little bit limited in this area, and being able to centralize both the personnel budgeting with operating capital and have it all tied together is going to be pretty impactful for the city.
And traditionally, how these are done is you literally have a giant Excel workbook where somebody is manually calculating or putting formulas into calculating grade and step increases. It's extremely time consuming. It's obviously can be error prone, and then it doesn't leave much time for what we call, your what if scenario planning, because you want to see what's going to happen if what if we leave these 2 positions vacant and give our bargaining unit a 3% increase, and I want to see, what if we had to fill those 2 vacant positions? So there's going to be multiple scenarios that you're going to want to look at, and the idea is that now you have the time to do that because the system's doing all the back-end calculations. So you can easily make a couple of tweaks, copy a workforce plan, make a couple of tweaks, and then see that in real time, how it stacks up, how those scenarios stack up.
So then it feeds right back into the tentative budget in Munis, because right now, Richard will calculate all these things in a spreadsheet, et cetera, and then have to populate Munis. So this would be doing that for him?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Once we get the adopted budget, it's a simple export, and then I'll go to Munis to adopt the budget.
How about would this have a payroll function too, to let our payroll clerk know that this is the time of year that this person has a step increase or et cetera?
Yes.
Yeah.
So one of the things we could do is, because the information's there, so if you wanted to develop a report that would show you, let's say month by month, which employees are coming up for their step increases, we can absolutely set that up. This is kind of going back to the flexibility of the system. Once you have all that transactional data, the views, I try to tell people to kind of think about what you want the end result to be. What would you like your report to look like? And then we can kind of reverse engineer it. But absolutely, something like step increases upcoming, you can develop a report that'll show who's coming up on an employee level. So this was just one very generic workforce report that I want to show that kind of goes into those scenarios. You can see what we're looking at here. Again, you can break this down different ways. We're looking at the expense broken down by expense type. So just these, in reality, you can have more breakdowns. Your salaries and wages would go into overtime, and you could look at every single aspect of an employee's cost. Okay. You can look at it by department as well very easily by switching this filter. But what we're looking at here is exactly what I just described. Multiple scenarios of a various workforce plan. Before you actually make the budget decision, you can kind of see what you're up against. So for example, what we're looking at here is a scenario where it's just your fully funded base workforce. That's about 11.8 million at the bottom, that total. And then what we go on here is we can say, well, this is a scenario in which we suspend 3 vacant positions. You can see the effect there, and so on and so forth. Hey, what if we give the police officers a 3% raise, and then here's kind of a mixed one where we're gonna take some positions out, give a raise to a certain bargaining unit, so you can begin to put those different scenarios into practice. And what's really cool is underneath it all is this summary table. So as you want to drill into that detail, again, this isn't going to go all the way down, it's just not built, it's just built for demoing. But as you want to go into your payroll, and let's say you want to split that out to overtime, you can then generate the actual employees and look at these in a number of different ways from an employee level. So you can see 162 employees. Here's their employee number, their base salary, and all the various cost elements that are associated with it. So you always have that underlying detail that's ready to be exported, and that's typically more important when, for an analyst level, where you can kind of pull stuff out and do quick ad hoc analysis. Does that make sense? So this is meant to show the various ways you can look at kind of your workforce, which is going to flow directly into your budget requests. And then at the end of the day, you have a couple of things that you have to, number one, release a budget book. And number two, you may want to tell a little bit more of a narrative story about what's happening with the budget. So we cover both of those situations as well. I just want to show you for budget book a very brief end result that we did for the city of Diamond Bar, California. This is a 216-page budget book for FY19. It took them less time than it did when they used to have to scan in their Munis printouts online, and the end result is much nicer looking. In fact, they won the GFOA award for distinguished budget presentation with this budget. So it's fully linked up, all numbers flow in automatically, and it's extremely flexible in terms of how you want to build it out. But this is just one example, and I'll share this obviously with the group if you want to look through this a little bit more. So, just budget summary. So, yes, so now that's kind of the end result of your budgeting process, which is the publication of your budget book. I want to transition just for a quick second into kind of more day-to-day. Like, for example, if you're Mayor Reed coming in to have a cup of coffee in the morning and you want to get some key information. So this is another key point that OpenGov focuses on. So this would be an example of a dashboard. So a dashboard is just a way where you can get some top line information about what is important to you, what are the data points that you need to be following on a regular day-to-day basis. So this is Mayor Reed's sample dashboard, and when he comes in, he may want to see how we're doing with our cash and investment balances to date compared to prior years. This is all interactive. You can click to the underlying reports if you want to get more information. You can see this is police department year-to-date expenses, and then if you want to look at overtime, here's your overtime tab right here and see how you're doing for the year for your overtime. And you can do this for obviously for multiple departments. We just looked at the police department as one example. What's really great is that, number one, you can have indicators. So you can see, you can set targets for any one of these tiles or metrics and where you want to perform, and then you can track against that particular performance target, and you're going to get kind of visual cues about anything like, needs focus is coming up in red, green is on target, and yellow is on track. Now, one thing you may have noticed is that this is not just financial information. As I said, we can pull in all data no matter where it sits. And we even have the ability now where if something, for example, one of the real great use cases that we've been talking through with Richard was for employees, time cards. Where are your employees on a departmental basis? How are they spending their time? Well, it turns out, and Richard, please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but right now it's a fairly manual process where each department, on a department by department basis, has their own way of recording where they're spending their time. They're doing it taking pen to paper. And from there, they're sending that paper copy into the clerk's office. The clerk is entering that into a data warehouse or a spreadsheet somewhere. And from there, it just kind of sits, and you're not getting any real information from a city management level.
I
out
think
of that
that's
data.
worse, and then they print that out and then send it to the central clerk, who then
Yes.
re-enters it.
I knew I was missing a couple of manual entry steps, so thank you.
Just all the duplication that's going on.
Absolutely. So the idea is that's important data. You want to see that if you're making decisions for the city. And somebody is recording it. So the idea is let's get rid of the duplication of efforts. Let's capture that data at one time. So one of the specific use cases that we can do is department by department, we can build a form that these folks can fill in that will be easier for them than writing it down on a piece of paper, or at least as easy. We'll do it specifically for those departments. Once the data is captured in, it can be pre-filled choices if they want, where it's very flexible. Once the data is filled in by those employees or department heads on that department level, it's captured. And from there, you can begin to generate reports off it and get that kind of line of sight. It can be a metric on one of your dashboards. So that's just one specific area. So you can actually capture, whether it's financial, non-financial data, or data you just need, you can actually ask those people to enter it directly into OpenGov as well.
So what success have you had in converting people to that kind of a payroll reporting system, our timesheet system?
So the key is it has to be easier. And I think adoption of any software system, nobody likes going to a new system. I think it's not a secret. People are going to resist. But in our experience, if we can show people that this is easier for you and you can get more out of this and it's not harder, then that goes a long way. So ease of use is a huge component, and that's why we built this solution to be extremely easy to use, not just for Richard, but for a 30-year DPW head who, where we built it so he can go in there and you can get what you need out of him as well.
So
Just
compliance rate?
the man and women hours you would save with the
Sure.
efficiency is incredible.
If we get compliance though,
Right.
so I'm wondering, what's your compliance rate for this?
Yeah, so what we find is the struggle with adoption is the one-offs, right? We can do, these 3 things here, 2 here, 1 here. And it's the one-offs that, have created the bottlenecks, right? The inefficiencies, internally. Where a department head would then be able to enter their time card and then the next tab up, see, monthly where their overtime expenditures are, plus how many potholes they filled at this point, all in one platform is very much where that is why we actually have such a high adoption rate across our customer base.
So you've been successful, you have a high adoption rate of putting the system in place at the employee level in the institutions you've worked with?
We have from monthly active users in the platform anywhere from, small towns and villages that have 1, 2, 3 users up through, Washington DC, Richmond, Virginia, who have a couple hundred. So it's a pretty widely adopted platform.
I'm talking just the payroll module though, because we're contemplating a different timesheet system right now, so, your software would be a real plus for us if it could take care of that need,
Sure.
but it won't be a plus for us if it's not adopted at the individual employee level.
Absolutely.
And one of the kind of the safeguards that we've built into this for that reason, and it's actually across the entire platform, not just timekeeping or payroll, but our user notifications. So if someone submits a budget request or it's time for them to submit their timesheets, they actually get email notifications in their inbox based on their user, and everything in the platform is uniquely linked. So if it's a timesheet request, they click on that link, it takes them to the form where they enter that in. If it's somebody shared a dashboard with them, or Richard's taking a look at some overtime analysis and he needs to share with the police chief, say, hey, looks like we're only about halfway through the month and our overtime's been creeping up. He hits a share button. Now all of that is happening, done via email notifications with a note from Richard. Police chief's clicking on his individual link or report and able to come through and kind of dynamically access the information. So,
Have you tried to do this and have had a municipality just simply not successfully implement that?
in terms of like the actual
The payroll.
payroll tracking. Not to say that it hasn't happened, I personally have not worked with one, but we can always find an example of somewhere we could have done something a little bit better.
I think our payroll application has enough different uses, whether, obviously, I think we kind of not stumbled upon, but the time card issue use case was actually kind of a nice surprise, where he said, hey, we could actually help you with that. The main core of our system is more for Richard and the city management to be able to have a firm and clear view into the workforce costs. And to
Sure, and that's got a lot of utility, but if it turns out that we're double entering,
Yeah.
that we have silos that refuse to put it in the system.
Yep.
So then they're still doing their old system, and then that adds one additional level of burden, because now Richard's office has to take their old system and stick it in this system, and they didn't have to do that before. So it really only works well if you can get the ground floor users to be adopting this.
But I mean, it wouldn't, from a compliance standpoint, I mean, they have to, if they want to get paid, they have to submit their payroll.
Yeah.
I think the issue is somewhere like Public Works, though, who has all their laborers.
Right,
Um,
right, and they have a
they-
number of different
they
codes
manually-
with what they,
Right, and they manually write it down, and then Christie or Caitlin, then puts it on a timesheet and sends it. They don't have a computer access, so you say they get an email notification, but if it's sent out and you have a user who doesn't have an email, or has an email but they have no access to it, I think that's where.
I think we would have to
Concern-
invest in
concern-
some computers for them to, at their
Like
workplace
my
to,
department's easy.
iBooks.
It's great. Boom, it's done in a heartbeat.
we would have to invest in some
Chromebooks.
computers for
Manually.
the various employees to have access to.
Rich?
The worst case scenario is what the mayor's alluding to is you'll get DPW to feed this, but they'll still be feeding their old Novatech system too. So you'll just double the work. Because, you know, it's a pride of motherhood, that's their system. The timesheets that Sylvia's talking about, yeah, they get written down every day and then they get entered into this Novatech system, and that's the way they're tracking.
Mhm.
So if they're told to put it in here, they're gonna be doing it twice. As opposed to going out there and pulling a plug on the old system, once they're comfortable that they can transition from it. Like with MLD, they completely calculate the payroll separately from what we're doing in the finance system. It's just a duplication that's unnecessary. And they say they're still not doing it, but they are. The lady that used to do it, that's her primary job, she used to calculate the payroll in a worksheet first, before they gave us any timesheets, and then they gave us timesheets, and we would, you know, put the payroll into Munis. And then we have to compare with her to make sure that, you know, they agree with it. It's like, it's a waste of time. But
Seems so
But there are-
inefficient that it's.
But there are
And-
procedures that we can develop and expectations that we can set, and then it's up to administration to make sure they're adhered to.
And implemented.
Yeah,
we have to go out there and pull that other stuff out of their hands.
right. They're cold, dead hands, you said, right?
That's what they say. You're not gonna get my timesheets or my invoices out of me until you pry them out of my cold dead
Yeah,
fingers.
right.
I mean, I've had somebody actually tell me that.
Uh,
It's nuts, it's crazy, and it's like, what are you resisting? It's like, there's a way to make this more efficient, but they just don't want to do it.
So there's two tracks here. There's the payroll as it's ongoing, is what you've been talking about, where folks are filling in their timesheets and sending it. So there's already obviously a current process, however inefficient. That information does make its way into your accounting system somehow, okay? So at the core of our workforce planning, you alluded to, Rich, when you're budgeting for your workforce, you have a big Excel workbook that you have to manually go through and make all those individual calculations, correct?
Yeah, we never developed a workforce planning in Munis, budgeting in Munis, that should have been done years and years ago when they first bought the system. So we export the names and the dollars, and we actually create a worksheet, and we know what's happening next year with their steps and their longevity changes and so forth. And we say, okay, here's your budget for your department, 3 people, Sylvia's department's easy, DPW, 40 people, a little harder, you know?
Yes, so that's one track. That's the aspect right away we can automate. It's captured in our system, and then that frees up the time for that scenario planning from a budgeting standpoint. So that's one aspect of our use of our workforce, and that's the main use of our workforce planning module, okay? However, so that, you talked about the compliance rates on that. That's tremendous. I think that's probably, if not 100%, very close to it, because it's providing tremendous time relief on the finance director, the chamber, and the CFO. And it's giving you more information that you need and want to see. This other aspect of the tracking it as it comes, we're just saying, hey, we can help out with this. We do have the technical capabilities to do it when it makes sense. It's available to you. You've already owned it. So we can put that in place at a time that you think it makes sense. So you're not going out and investing in a new time tracking system.
Are you comfortable with that, Richard?
Anything that would get rid of the duplication that we've had would be ideal.
Do you have any idea,
I
Richard,
can
how
see-
many?
I can see us migrating our information from Munis about, the individuals and their pay rates and their steps and their history and so forth. And then having that develop in the workforce planning for a budget in the following year. I mean,
Right.
that's an ideal perspective for this. This is the thing that I would look to use the most and
Yep.
make sure that we're getting the most advantage of it. Just a matter of saying, okay, now on the actual end of it,
Yep.
how are we gonna feed it so we do it once?
Richard, would you have any idea, just a rough estimate, how many labor hours a week are spent with the duplication of?
When I first started working here in 2007, might have been in 2008 that I did it, I actually looked at the opportunity costs of what we were spending on doing payroll. As everybody was saying, the departments are doing their payroll. I actually thought when I first came here that they had their own checkbooks. And they're actually writing their own paychecks. Because they were saying they're doing payroll. I said, what are you talking about? I said, we do the payroll, don't we? Oh, no, they're out there doing their payroll. So I looked at what they were doing and looked at, their calculations versus sending us the timesheets that we're doing it over again. And I think they came up with about $420,000 to $480,000 annually. That was
In terms of time spent.
opportunity, cost, time,
Yep.
wasted time. Where you wouldn't say to someone, okay, we're gonna take your job away and send you down the street. It's like, no, we're gonna have you do something more meaningful, as opposed to wasting time on duplication of payroll
Yes.
input. And was that?
And that was 10 years ago?
Yeah.
We
I
used
think
to-
that we're doing less of that now. It was really bad when I first came here.
We've got some better
Everything-
systems now.
Some
Maybe.
better, yeah.
Well, we recently expanded a person's duty because it was claimed they did a lot of payroll. And there's another request coming up for a person who needs to do a lot of payroll. And these are just two departments. I mean, I think that's the single biggest reason to expand both clerical duties and salaries that we hear about is payroll functions
The fastest way to eliminate it is have everybody
on one system.
go through-
Standardize
Go through
it.
data capture,
Yeah.
Right?
which companies have been doing since the 1980s.
Well, there we go.
Yeah.
It's shop data collection, but, it's a matter of an electronic system to do it. Rec Complex is doing it, but we've never networked it. We were doing it and it was never supported, so, it got scrapped. We're not really doing time and attendance, so you can't look at what's being collected day by day here. If you look at a dashboard saying, okay, let's go in and see what's happening daily, our payroll happens weekly or bi-weekly, depending on, which department you're in. But if there was a time and attendance module, where people were clocking in and clocking out, you're actually data collecting, you have that information every day.
So we can provide, obviously, some guidance based on our expertise. We can provide best practices and we can provide the technology. Obviously, in any type of, when you're talking about shifting policies, there's obviously some thought that goes in there. So with that, I'll just jump out. So we're in Mayor Reed's dashboard here, and this is supposed to, specific for him. One thing we want to illustrate is that these dashboards are actually made for as many uses or folks as you want to see them. You can see here's Mayor Reed's dashboard, but you can do this. We see people doing this based off of strategic goals. We see them doing it on departmental dashboards, and we even see it on, as we say, positional dashboards that are folks can use to just track what's important to them. One of the best use cases we see out of these dashboard functions is that we can set them up and give your department heads an easy way to look at the information that you want them to be looking at and they should be looking at and maybe they want to look at, okay? So if you have, I understand you do have regular monthly reporting that goes out to your department heads here. Instead of manually creating that and sending it out via email or paper copy, and then, you know, some of them may be better than others at looking at it. This is a system where it's live feed, it's set up once, and they can look at it, they can look at this any day with the most up-to-date data from that night before. And what's great from an oversight standpoint is it allows city management to kind of get the statistic of who's going in and looking at the reports how often. So it's kind of a dual use there. So, oh, sure.
Another, what we hear a lot from our customers is this pushes out that proactive budget management, the day-to-day basis, to the department head's fingertips, right? So it's increased internal accountability. It's being more proactive in, managing their costs and expenditures, managing potential overrun, as opposed to reactive after it's already too late, right? So really, again, putting that information, that key information is going to allow them to make better decisions, better manage the budget proactively, right at their fingertips. And our user and usage model is all unlimited, so each of the council members can have one of these dashboards. The department heads can have their own dashboard, looking at what's important to them. Individual users, at maybe an analyst level, it's very flexible in how it's set up.
So your 311, you can set up a module for tracking complaints and trouble tickets and all that kind of stuff?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep, so I think in the mayor's dashboard, we had, police response times with pothole repair requests, with overall citywide expenditures and overtime. That could be 3, 4, 5 different core systems, and that's really the power of the Open Up platform, is be able to aggregate all that into one pane of glass. I think the term you used earlier was a data islands, right? So eliminating the data islands and all the places that information may exist, and just pulling it into one location, so departments are a little bit more efficient with how they receive and interact with information.
So your system communicates with Munis continuously?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And how difficult is that to set up? Can you describe that for us?
The setup process?
Yes.
Yeah, so we'll just go overall kind of platform setup. So as I mentioned, setting up unique chart accounts to Plattsburgh. So we replicate that in the platform, and then we'll have Richard verify that the structure is correct. And then what we'll do is we'll actually set up a feed, or consider a connection, where on a nightly basis, Munis will push us the general ledger transactions in the nighttime. And then once that's set up, that it's kind of set and forget it. There's no human interaction.
So once a day at night,
Yeah,
this transfer happens?
exactly, yeah.
What
Does
about?
it go both ways? So if you have a payroll module or a trouble ticket module, a 311 module, and somebody enters something on their timesheet or their trouble ticket, does that then go into Munis nightly as well?
So we don't want to write back to Munis directly, and that's by design of security, right? We're getting people out of directly interacting with the accounting system, having people kind of meddle around in there. It's a two-step export import, and that goes for the budget, the payroll, all those things. But it is very quick.
So you have, I'll call it a private cloud for lack of a better term.
Sure.
You have a private cloud that we will access, and we will send you our data nightly. Over what kind of communications line? Over the internet, VPN? How does that work?
Yeah, so it's a secure FTP site. So
FTP, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And since we're on the topic, our OpenGov cloud, if you will, sits on top of Amazon Web Services. So it's one of the industry-leading cloud
Sure.
providers.
Sure.
Our level of encryption is higher than, bank level security. And it's just accessed by any of the staff here that have credentials and a web browser, as well as being accessed by mobile tablets, from anywhere.
Now, Richard is our Munis maven. He understands it better than anybody in the city, obviously. But how much of his time would it take to make this transition, and describe some of the tasks he would be required to do? He and his office.
Yeah, you kind of beat me. I was gonna ask about the training, what sort of training
Yeah,
and
yeah.
customer service and so
Yeah,
on.
great question. So, because we only deal with the public sector and state and local governments, we understand that resources aren't just, growing on trees around here, right? So we try.
You're
to-
looking at him.
Yeah, we're looking at the entire health team over there. So we very much try to account for that in our engagements, right? Our goal is not to put more work on the plate of Richard or any staff, it's to actually augment it with our own staff.
Right,
So-
and it's easy to see how long-term that would happen. That data organized the way you've done it here is gonna be fantastic. It's just a task of getting there, I would imagine, is a little tough.
Sure.
But, so I would guess that there's some sort of structure that you would require. The data comes out of Munis in a certain structured fashion, and
Well, the good thing is, of our 2,000 plus customers, over 300, maybe closer to 400 at this point, are on some type of Tyler product. Tyler Munis being the most popular. The head of our integrations team and kind of platform team is actually former executive vice president from Tyler Technologies. So our experience is tremendous with,
Okay.
and we've
Good.
had all that pretty much streamlined.
okay.
But can I also?
Yeah, please do, about
and then
the
kinda
training and customer
Yep,
service and
yep.
so on.
So we take all that platform build on our side. We typically have customers up and running in about a 6-week timeframe. We just brought Suffolk County, which is out on Long Island. I think there are 4,000, 5,000 employees, $3 billion total operating capital budget. We had them up and running live for this year's budget cycle on OpenGov in about 8 weeks. So think of an organization of that size in 8 weeks is pretty remarkable. You'll get a dedicated team both from the day you guys say go and implementation through to the entire life of our engagement being an OpenGov customer. So that's a project manager during the beginning of the processes. That big roster of folks that are former finance directors, former budget directors, will be tagged to be an extra set of hands for Richard, make sure we're setting things up right, whether it's budget requests or proposals or reports or dashboards, taking a look at all of your use cases, making sure that OpenGov's configured exactly how you're expecting it, and then 2 other folks, typically customer success manager and a customer success analyst. So the manager is kind of the day-to-day person, whether you want to call them once a month, once a day, once a year. They're part of, they're dedicated to you. Our young lady works with all of our New York cities. Her name's Tara Manning. And then your customer success analyst is someone that is a little bit more data focused. So really understands nuances of the Munis data or other, 311 data. I'll give you another, for example. We actually have a young lady, customer success analyst, that worked in New York City budget offices, right, as a budget analyst. So that level of expertise, and again, that's all included as part of your engagement with OpenGov.
Thank you.
That was great.
Great. So one of the next kind of use cases that we talked about was having the ability to create some narrative reporting that's a little bit more visually appealing, that can combine both narratives and also kind of leverage the charts and data points that are already captured in OpenGov as well. Now, you can use this both from an internal facing standpoint, we have plenty of use cases for that, but also when you're ready, you can use these for external to the community and kind of tell stories to the community on whatever topic. We've got plenty of different topics. It's not limited to just finance or budget stories. So for today, I just want to show you an example of what City of Elk Grove did to communicate their budget out to the town before the release of their budget book. So you can see this is their budget fact sheet for FY 18-19. And you can see this is their mayor giving the video address of what they're trying to accomplish in the 2018-19 budget. So we think we have a lot of times utilizing that video tool as well, where you can kind of make that video and put it in the story right there. And then what's great is you can start to leverage graphics and charts from the underlying OpenGov portal. And you can really use it to tell whatever story that you want to tell, whether it's focused on workforce or just the general high-level topics or points of that particular year's budget. The graphics are, you can have them live linked, you can have them static. So there's a lot of flexibility there in what you're allowed to show. And what's really cool is that with OpenGov, you also have these surveying capabilities where you can not only communicate to the town, but you can actually use this internally on committees and things like that, or if you want to get feedback for a particular project or story, you can actually use this survey capability to get that feedback, both internally and externally. So you can see Elk Grove actually gave their community a budget challenge at the end of their fact sheet and mayor's address. And you can see that they're asking to allocate $100 of general purpose tax revenue based on these categories. And what it really allows is that we could dig into this, but what it allows you to do is, from a city management standpoint, kind of take the pulse of the community more than just the folks that are coming to the regular town meetings. It gives the folks that maybe just for whatever reason haven't come to weigh in as well. And you can see in Elk Grove, they got 101 different responses, which was a tremendous response for them.
It's very small community. The other thing that we'll add is, obviously, you'll see the flexibility of the approach to the entire platform, but this is an example of just budget priorities, but you can have a feedback, a citizen survey or feedback topic on something like your downtown, the revitalization plan, right? And hey, can you tell us what you think of so-and-so, right? And it's very configurable in that sense. And then additionally, for something like the budget priorities, we can also, we give you the reports, we give you the feedback in the report format, and we can actually break it down by council ward or by zip code, those types of things, so you can actually see across the areas of the city who most cares about what topics.
We have actually a really good use case I can send you afterwards that shows that those budget priorities broken down by ward or by different areas of a county.
Great.
So, again, this is just one other, just illustrating that you can have these interactive graphics as part of a story. This is what Kalamazoo, Michigan did to tell their budget story. They wanted to release some, they chose to go the pie chart route and put some narrative information around it. But we have a lot of great examples of this narrative storytelling feature. There's even a great one Eric mentioned, Suffolk County, where actually they're using this functionality to track all of their capital projects, and they're actually, you can embed the budget for that particular project right in the story as well. So the use cases are really limitless.
I just thought of this. Let's say you have a municipality that has a strategic plan and goals that it's trying to accomplish. Do you have a breakdown of how they present their progress?
Yeah.
So this is actually a city that I worked with. This is Winchester, Virginia. Worked very closely with their CFO, their city manager, and communications staff, and very, very kind of similar, similar thing that you said. They had a 4-goal, high-level citywide goal strategic plan that they just written. They wanted a way to easily communicate it out to their constituents that they would understand. They wanted to be open with showing the progress towards the key goals. But from an actual management standpoint, they wanted just one single platform that was easy enough to manage that, not have to manage a bunch of PDFs and all these different data locations. So, you just kind of scroll through here. You'll see they highlight the goal, highlight the progress towards that goal. Are they on track? And then you can click into one like economy. And this just kind of gives that high level view, and then we can actually drill down and see the metrics for each goal and each objective, right? So I know you guys are went through kind of your strategic planning retreat, and we're looking at some kind of best practices in different areas. And this is just a quick way that you can populate that right on an interactive page.
Pretty cool.
And one other great point about, you mentioned strategic initiatives and tracking them, where our budgeting development tool actually allows you to tag strategic initiatives to particular budget proposals or worksheets. So you can actually, when you get to that level, you can start to track through your budgeting development what strategic goals certain budget proposals go against.
One other point on the Kalamazoo budget story, they're also Tyler Means customers, so just to show you the kind of interoperability between us and Means.
Just wanted to show, there was a question earlier, kind of the back end of our story portal. As you can see, this is kind of, if you're one of the regular users who are creating these stories, they're very easy to use. You can leverage a lot of different examples. You can keep things in draft forms. You can develop templates. And they're just, you can see there's all sorts of different, forms and data points that you can put in there. So this is just from our, our one demo asset. There's 6 pages of different stories that you can leverage to do different things with. And it's all hooked up to the chart, so there's no double work. You're just saying, I want this chart, pull it in, and it allows you to type in an email box, basically, your narrative.
We would have so much fun.
And getting back to the beginning, we talked about developing the budget and then allowing, leadership and department heads to track and manage their budget, and now communicating out to the public. We've done that entirely within the OpenGov platform. So we've created the budget, moved it over to manage it and track it, our dashboards and reports, and then communicated out what our budget story is, right? What's our budget strategy for the city?
In fact, this is the Suffolk County example, where you can see they've captured all the detail of their capital project. This is a specific one to I think it was a ball field. And you can see we have our mapping capabilities. So that's one thing we didn't really show, but you can map things as well in OpenGov. And you can capture all the information that you want. This is kind of more of an internal facing example, so it's very data heavy. But these are all the data points they need to go through their capital budgeting and capital project management process. So again, you can then start to leverage some of the internal numbers and reports. And this is whited out because I'm not an internal user in Suffolk County, but this is where you can see their expenses, funding, and attachments are live, right, embedded within the capital project story. And then here's City of Plattsburgh. So just to wrap up, way back in, I think this was developed in October. I don't think these, I don't think the key goals have changed all that much. We really talked about developing these best practices and streamlining the budgeting and planning process, engaging everybody, both internally and externally, providing self-service solutions to allow for those accurate projections, a clear view for city management into workforce planning, and understanding those full cost of the OPEBs that you had brought up earlier, Mayor Reed. Development of your budget book for council and community, which was a longer term goal, but it's available and ready for you when you want to do it. And then having that flexible reporting tool that can provide you insights into various areas of interest. One whole area that we actually kind of proofed out was our your grant and revolving loan funds. So the budget builder is actually viable to use to track that program as well. I think we worked with Eva on that. And then, basically just having that justification for partnering with OpenGov as well. We can touch on that as well. I know that maybe just proactively tackle that, because I know it will be an issue, but obviously we want you to partner with us, and we want to put an aggressive offer out there for you folks. So we did put forth an offer, but I know any type of spending is not insignificant. You have to be sure of what you're getting when we're asking you to make that investment with us. So I'll just quickly say a couple of things that we're finding. You talk about opportunity, cost, and efficiencies. So over these 2,000 clients that we work with, We talk to them. They have Mayor Reed, city management. You'll have our CEO's cell phone number. You'll have our president's cell phone number. You'll be able to contact him directly if there's a problem. Our customers are always in contact, and we're always talking to them about what we can do better and how they're experiencing the platform. So what we found has been really encouraging for us. So we're seeing folks spend 80% less time on the budget development process. We're seeing them spend 50% less time on reporting, day-to-day tasks that we showed you through those dashboards and reports. And we're actually seeing a 20% decrease in FOIA requests for the cities that utilize our citizen engagement tools. And what I found to be one of the most exciting things, and we have some very specific use cases that we can point to, is on average, we're not gonna come in and say that we're gonna save you a bunch of money in your budget, but what we found is that having those time savings combined with a line of sight into the budget that we provide, we're seeing communities on average get about 1% of their operating budget they identify for reallocation, okay? So that's not to say, but it's about making those dollars go further. And that's one of the most encouraging stats that we have, is that we're allowing communities to make their dollars stretch a little bit more and identify funding that can be used in other places to tackle other initiatives.
So this requires a big investment in upfront time with you all and with us, and a long-term commitment to partner in this. You know, one concern we would have is if we do this for a year, we put in all that investment, it's just simply not working, and we're locked in. The city's had software debacles in the past, and I bet you every single municipality you've worked with can talk about some six-figure software debacle. The last thing we'd want to do is revisit this a year from now and find out that this just wasn't good money spent on the behalf of taxpayers. So what assurances do we have on that?
Yeah. I'll share a story of our director of product for budgeting. He had an 8-figure software debacle in Montgomery County, Maryland, that was pretty well publicized. So we certainly understand that, you know, that risk is out there. Obviously, this comes into play when there are tools that are not purpose-built for the public sector, that it's a private sector tool that somebody will sell into a bank and said, hey, let's go try to sell it to Plattsburgh. You know, so a lot of those things are already thought about ahead of time, in that this is a government-specific tool. In terms of insurances from a contractual perspective, you know, we obviously we want to be a long-term partner for you all. You know, most of our customers come on board for about 5 years as a starting point. We obviously will put our name and our brand and our reference customers behind much of that, and ask you to do your due diligence. And then there are obviously some pieces on the contractual side that allow you to say, hey, if we're trying to step out of this, that you potentially do.
And you've got competitors out there like ClearGov and others that contact us, and we're on all these government emails. You constantly are bombarded with entities that are trying to do the same sort of thing. Can you tell us how we should regard you as stacking up against your competitors?
Yeah, so you named a couple. Obviously we have, if you think about the 3 critical areas that we talked about for budgeting, reporting, and performance and dashboards, and the community and citizen engagement piece, there are competitors per each, right? So there are some, you can budget in Munis, or you can post a PDF online, right? For a comprehensive solution, we're certainly the only company on the market. You mentioned a couple. I think
ClearGov.
By name. Obviously, we're very grateful for companies in GovTech that try to do the things that we are doing. However, we are an enterprise software company that's almost 200 employees, product development and engineering of 80, which is bigger than most companies in the GovTech space, and probably 2 or 3 of the ones that you mentioned combined. Where their entire staff's of 20, and that's 1/5 of, or 1/10 of our entire kind of staff. we have $80 million in funding that's invested into software development. So this is not an accident. This is not something that we're trying to maybe touch into budgeting or maybe try to go do some citizen engagement. This is a purpose-built effort with a direct vision and a direct mission to deliver this software to the government and to the tune of $80 million to date.
And I'll just add a personal anecdote, and I come from the public sector. When I was looking to make this change, OpenGov was there, and I knew of these other. ClearGov is headquartered in Massachusetts, about 30 minutes from where I live. I did my due diligence, and it was a clear choice for me that I wanted to be with OpenGov because I think our mission and our technology is there, and we have a long-term goal to be the standard in municipal budgeting and performance management.
From what I see, your product is more broad than others. I think ClearGov's focus really is on public transparency, information transparency, which obviously is important to the council, but also important to the council is the tools it gives them for budget analysis, and ClearGov does some of that too. But I think we'd also really want to carefully explore the timesheets options and the 311 complaint-driven forms and all that kind of stuff that I think it may be broader than at least the competitors I've seen so far.
Yes, yeah, we are broader, but I will also say that from a use case standpoint, whether it's citizen engagement with another company that does citizen engagement or budgeting with another company that focuses on budgeting, I would put OpenGov into a bake-off with any one of those. We're built from the ground up for what you're doing, and these other companies just aren't.
I think Councilor Armstrong was also mentioning that you integrate well with our main websites,
Yes.
so they can access, and we can access some of the dashboards right on our site, and you can take the information from our site and put it into your.
So the Winchester strategic plan was actually the city of Winchester's website. It was winchesterva.gov that we were viewing it from.
Interesting.
You said you started in 2008.
So the technology has been around since 2008, 9, from a couple Stanford grads, our one of our co-founders and our CEO, Zach Bookman, and a gentleman that founded a company called Palantir, which is one of the largest big data analytics companies that serves the defense sector. We soon validated that there was a very significant issue in local government from accessing of data, budgeting and creating a strategic and well thought out budget, and even just giving information, whether it's to the citizens or to the city or county leadership. So we actually started with it as a nonprofit, and then soon we learned that if we were going to help our communities across the country, that we needed to raise money, turn to for-profit, dump money into software development, make this a commercial effort, and that's the only way that we were going to drive and execute on our mission. So we actually officially kind of opened doors as OpenGov Incorporated at the end of 2011, beginning of 2012.
So
We have
since
received a
then,
proposal.
since then, you've managed to sign 2,000 new customers. So 2011, 0, 2019, 2,000 customers. What are your goals for this year? To grow how many additional?
Yeah, so we will probably be over 3,000 by the end of the year. I think we just hit 2,100 as of this past week. We work with every jurisdiction in the state of Ohio. We work with probably 2 or 3 dozen cities and counties across the state of New York. So. And we actually just signed and went live with our first customer in Australia.
I have notes from my first meeting when I met with Adam Stone, as I talked to you earlier. At that time, you were serving 1,600 governments. $1 trillion had been analyzed in 48 states, so you hadn't gotten to 50 yet.
We
So-
looked at, we're still at 49, we're sitting at pesky 49.
Oh, okay.
I think,
South Dakota.
I think it's actually up this way.
We're close.
But, yeah, and we're actually over 10 trillion now in budgets analyzed.
Wow.
So I was just gonna say, if you keep it up, you're gonna run out of municipalities. But it sounds like you're going international, so that won't be a problem for a long time.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just with countries that are like us, so it's Canada and kind of in Australia, ones that logically make sense.
We have received an official proposal with the figures.
It's on the back of the,
Yeah,
Oh, I
it's right
didn't-
here.
I'm sorry, I
And I
didn't
believe
look
what we
through
gave you is a 7-year price protection. So that's also something to keep in mind as
So-
we roll in, those numbers will.
Sorry.
So pardon me for asking pesky questions, but
That's your
obviously
job,
you-
Colin.
I know. I try to live up to it. Obviously, your options, your program is more expensive than others we're looking at. So I'm trying to figure out, well, okay, but then they do this, so it'll save us this cost here, this cost here. So I'm looking at the Winchester, Virginia website. And so this is populated on OpenGov in your cloud, so we could presumably not have to pay for our cloud services for our website, for instance. Is that correct? Because I'm trying to add all these things up. Okay, we save a few $1,000s here, a few $1,000s there.
Yep, so there's nothing to download or install here on the city side. There's no server or hosting costs or anything like that. That's entirely incorporated in that annual subscription. Again, it's for the full OpenGov cloud. Unlimited users, unlimited usage. So as many departments in here, in the platform that you'd like to have working, as many budget scenarios or personnel or workforce scenarios as you would like to run, as many reports, as much data, as many of the public-facing engagement pages or stories. You can have as many as you'd like, and that's, again, for the life of our engagement. And then all those support resources, right, from our customer success team, that's all built into that annual cost.
But this website from Winchester, you guys sponsor that?
It's right here.
If you go winchesterva.gov,
So that is their domain, but is it the strategic plan one?
Yes.
no, it's just their main website.
So they still host their domain and their site, but the pages that you see in there are the OpenGov pages that are, instead of them creating a web page for that, they just drop in the OpenGov page.
You mean some of the pages that I would see there, but not the main page?
The links, yeah, not like their main.
Not their homepage.
So in other words, it's an add-on to their website.
Right.
well, some of the things that we use Civic Plus for, I
Right, that's
believe,
what I'm
we have a
looking at.
contract with them.
Right.
So you think this could be substituted?
I don't know. I hesitate to say that, but I think that's
Yeah.
sort of what you're looking at is, are there any savings if we use
I mean,
their
I'm looking at
service
I'm looking
instead
at the annual cost, and I see us saving at least that and much more in efficiency.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
that's obviously what
the
we hope for.
1%.
Right, no,
Yeah.
but I mean, just,
Like
But-
1 FTE, for
Right.
example, would
But
take
you-
care of that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
and I apologize if you guys addressed this because I stepped out for a while. Given the complexities and subtleties involved in municipal finance, it seems like there's a considerable risk that opening the city's budgeting to full public transparency can run the risk of people misconstruing information without a considerable level of context provided with the information. So what's your experience with other municipalities when that's come up?
And I'm not sure if you were here for this one, but that's exactly how the platform is utilized, right? So
Okay.
putting this context next to something like general fund expenditures is all something that you can do directly right in OpenGov.
Okay.
Yep.
So there's the narrative, and then there are the calculations.
And you're only releasing the data to the level at which you want to release it, or the data you want to release. It's not a dump. You control what goes out, the narrative around it, and the level at which anybody can drill down into it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
What percentage of our budget is this?
50,000?
Yeah. So
I actually
1%?
did a generic, I know that was one of the things you had asked for, was
Yeah.
a return on investment exercise. I can actually pull it up if you'd
Okay.
like.
0.2% of the general
Is it?
fund.
Plattsburgh ROI. So let me just put this on the larger, So when I calculated, I wanted to try to be more conservative, and this is not just flat dollars. We're looking at opportunity cost commingled, and then there's a separate line item for that, for kind of what we could hope to see you find for reallocation. So your 2018 Plattsburgh operating budget was about 55.7 million, and the finance salary budget encompasses a couple of numbers. Is roughly about 326. I just pulled these from your published budget. Okay, so what we've seen based on the information we get back from our customers has been, so reporting, for example, we're seeing a 50% reduction on average in reporting. I applied a 25% factor on this just to try to remain conservative. Budget process time, we're seeing a savings of about 80% on our surveys from our current customers. I tried to dial that back to be conservative to 30%. So what I tried to do is apply these the 30% to your numbers here for your finance staff. And what we're seeing here is a couple of different areas. Your savings for general reporting. These are opportunity cost savings, keep in mind. They're not flat dollars. You can see the numbers right there. About $49,000 for both general reporting and the budgeting process. And then I did a factor of 0.25% instead of 1% based off of your operating budget, and that number at 0.25% is $139,000. So if you can identify a quarter of 1% of funds for reallocation, that would be the number, about $140,000.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a general return on investment exercise that we walked through. And then additionally, we do have the use cases to support, those figures as well, of the 80% and the 50%. And then obviously there's intangible benefits of partnering with us, but I think we were more focused on where the tangible benefits.
Right.
But they're difficult to realize quickly because you save a few hours from this person over here and a few hours from this person over there. You can't add up all those hours and say we can reduce the workforce by 3 people. Maybe over time and through attrition and depending on what civil service will allow us to reclassify, et cetera. Those are long-term, hopefully realizable savings, but
Yeah, and how are they
short-term.
calculated really though? I mean, just help me get my mind wrapped around how you actually,
Sure. Oh, absolutely. It's actually
Yeah.
quite simple.
Okay.
So basically, all I did was say for your finance salary budget of $326,000. Okay.
Mhm.
I kind of estimated that roughly maybe 25% of the time is spent on what we'd call general reporting. That's maybe 25% of the job is compiling data and and getting reports set
yeah,
up.
but you misunderstand me. I can read that, but
Yep.
how do you estimate that from your experience and your data from other, so how do you arrive there at that estimate?
Yeah, so we try to quantify a lot of this with our customers. So
Right.
we use things like NPS scores and surveys and do like the actual case studies. So ask
Okay.
them to, hey, if you can you quantify for us, this benchmark and this benchmark, and then in 6, 8, 12 months, we revisit it with them and say, okay, now where are we? And then we actually go out and publish that as public case studies. So one of the ones that you'll actually see if you go on our website is Ravalli County, Montana, I believe.
Yeah.
They, utilizing our personal budgeting so workforce, they were able to realize savings of about $60,000 immediately just by flipping over to us with the accuracy of the tool as opposed to They're kind of Excel-based
Okay.
workforce.
So it's estimates that you're offered by your customers.
Correct.
Okay.
Richard, what do you think?
Well, you know, when we talk about reporting from our office, there's only one person doing that. So if this is gonna get me home at 4:30 or 5 o'clock at night, instead of staying until 6 or 7, I'm all for it. Because that's the extra time that I need to do to get the reporting done. Like tomorrow, I've got to update the report, so I have them ready for Thursday morning.
Are you confident, though, this will give you that utility?
What I said before when Dave and Eric and Sylvia and I were talking with Councilor Armstrong and Councilor Ansel is, the best part about this that I can see is that you sitting there can go get your own information, because
Instead of asking you.
well, not necessarily instead of asking me, because you just don't find it convenient or even easy or even palatable to get into Munis to get it.
Or us asking you to prepare reports for us.
And it's very difficult to get into Munis without being in City Hall. You can do this from anywhere.
Right.
So you can go in and pull your own information about overtime and all the details you want to ask questions about. Like, you're always asking questions in the meetings on Thursday night. Well, what about this? What about this? What about this? You know, the what about start to add up to a lot of reporting to go and dig stuff up where you can go and find it yourself. That's what I'm envisioning as a real benefit. The mayor likes to, what if, the 5 and 10 year forecast into the future. So that's gonna be a beneficial tool for him. And we don't have to worry about more concurrent users in units. If the budgeting is gonna be as successful as it sounds, where the input can come back and we can filter it and say, yeah, we're gonna post it in units as part of our base, it will reduce the budgeting time. Because everybody's out there putting information into whatever systems they have to give me budget information that I in turn have to go look at and filter and analyze and determine if it's okay. Is it meaningful? Is it credible? And then put it into the Munis system. If we can import it through the processes Eric was talking about, the 2-step update and post process, that's gonna save time.
And getting kind of a tangent of what I asked about before, if it has the granularity that Councilor Gibbs was asking the other day, well, just how is our overtime being actually spent on the individual kind of basis? If we can answer those questions, that's great. But if we can't do it, then really the utility is primarily the what ifs and all that kind of stuff, and it might not be worth the money. So it really depends on the degree to which we can successfully implement these features.
Right. The detail, like I was saying before this meeting, in the warm-up we had, we don't do a lot of detail right now in our input. We don't have the detail. Like if, just one example, if DPW is gonna put in on buying $300,000 worth of salt, it's not so many tons times so much unit cost to get to 300,000. It's one unit at $300,000 is what's in their requisition. So you don't know what the individual cost per ton of salt is, like somebody asked in the warm-up that we had. We don't have that unless you get down to the invoice level, because we're not inputting it that way. But that's not to say that we couldn't. Now, Dave said there's an option where someone in DPW can go out and put that information in the system and filter it in here so that you have that detail. The only concern there is, are they gonna do it accurately? So it could mean that we have to do some things differently as far as our input and the details of our input. You know, identifying just that this is a purchase for salt somewhere so that that can be filtered out and you can grab it all is something that's going to be important for the data collection in this. So we might have to do things differently with our input. Will that cost us more time? I don't know. You know, it could be that time is going to be used from the departments putting in requisitions with meaningful information in it for a change, instead of just $300,000 worth of salt, one unit. You know, it's meaningless. It doesn't make any sense. And then you're not receiving in the system against a PO by delivery and having the invoice come to finance so that you're more efficient that way. Finance doesn't know what's going on with the invoicing until the departments drop it off, instead of having the vendors mail it directly to us.
I keep thinking that with all the years that we bought salt, that if we had carefully recorded the amount of salt each year, that we should have a pretty good algorithm for figuring out how much salt we need each year by now.
That's not to say that DPW doesn't know all that information, but they're the only ones that have it. It's
Right.
not in our system anyway. So,
Now,
Some of these what-ifs that Richard mentioned come up frequently in the middle of a meeting.
Yeah.
And currently, we don't have the luxury of saying, well, take a look, here it is on the screen. You're saying that your program can do that via one of these dashboards perhaps, or, I mean, can we do like an on-the-fly ad hoc report in a meeting if we choose to do so? Is that possible, or would that be cumbersome and difficult?
Not at all. You actually just described a very common use case for a lot of customers, is using this in council meetings, board meetings, selectmen meetings, pulling it up and saying, hey, how much did we spend on police overtime, since July? And having it up in a matter of clicks instead of, well, let me get back to you by the end of the week.
I mean, that kind of tells a story that maybe we can get to a point where Richard doesn't have to spend so much time preparing reports for us.
well,
We're grateful for, of course, but
part of it goes back to we never developed a reporting system in Munis like we were supposed to. No one
Yeah.
wanted to do it.
yes.
And then also the consolidation of our data input not being consistent from department to department. So these are, like Eric and Dave were saying, these are best practices that we have to implement to enhance what we're going to get out of this. At the same time as having a convenient tool to gather it every day and be able to report it back in a quick fashion.
Like, that's
now
the
this
key.
proposal includes all of the features that we discussed, including the time system, time card, and so on. And would also include any advancements or developments within
Yep. So, we update our product twice a month. It's pushed out seamlessly, to you all. So you log in one morning and you have a feature request, or you ask for an update, or maybe we're just cleaning up some back-end performance stuff. It's all pushed out automatically. You don't have to download everything. Everybody's always on the most current version.
Do you have a users forum and an annual conference where you bring people together and they learn from each other?
Yeah, so we have regional user groups. So, we host one in the New England area, we host, I'm learning my New York geography pretty quick here. We have one in kind of like the greater New York City area, kind of south of here. We do them regionally, so you'll be able to learn from, your peers, other Munis customers, other cities of similar size and stature. As well as we do have an annual customer, we call it a festival, but it is like a similar user group, where we have executive, customer advisory board, as well as an entire.
Oh, so you wine and dine us then? You pay for our rooms. Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
As well as an open gov community, which is actually open to both open gov customers and non-customers as well, which is just community.opengov.com, where you can reach across the country and connect with the CIO of Milwaukee, CFO of San Antonio, budget analyst in Richmond, Virginia, about common challenges or use cases or just professional networking in general.
So this is a very broad tool with incredible amount of potential, just like our city has an incredible amount of potential. Our job is to realize that potential, I think, and change the culture and have the resolve. And this is a very, very bright and shiny object in front of us. And if we simply don't implement it consistently and over time and have the true dedication to making this thing work, it's going to be one of those software boondoggles.
Yeah, I was just
But I
thinking-
think, but I think that is on us.
Right.
Yes,
it
it
That is on
It
us.
That's exactly right.
So we have
We
to
got
have
to
the
put a
resolve
lot of
to do
effort
that.
into making it a success if we go this route.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, will just add, we have a lot of communities that I think are very similar to Plattsburgh, and at least our core functionality of clearer collaborative budgeting, better reporting, interactive reporting, giving you at least the basic information you need on a live basis, and giving you the ability to communicate that out with the city. Those are the things that there's no doubt in my mind that you're going to be able to realize. Now, some of the more intricate use cases where you would have to develop more best practices or a different process or think it through, agreed. The functionality is there, you would own it, but that I think is the areas where there's more of a potential for maybe not implementing that aspect of it.
But there again, there's support there. I mean, when we
Absolutely.
run up against an obstacle, we're not just having to solve the problem on our own. You are our consultants.
One thing you'll never find at OpenGov is a shortage of people that want to talk to you about doing things in the platform. So that's a pretty nice part about it is that
Full utilization.
Yeah, we've got the contractual things in place that spell out exactly what we're going to do for you, but in reality, it's much more than that.
And certainly in the long run, even the medium run, this can pay dividends. But if in the short run, people won't adopt it because they say, hey, listen, I'm way too busy to adopt this. I know in 3 months it'll save me all kinds of time, but I'm just worried about getting through this week. That's the culture that we have to change, right? And get the adoption to be successful.
But again, I think that's on us
It
to
is,
say, you know
absolutely.
what,
It is.
this is what we're doing, you need to adopt.
Failure's not
But I
an
bet
option.
you there's
Yeah.
a knowledge base that we can draw upon to come up with strategies in order to make it happen.
Right, we're not reinventing.
But I
No.
think we also need to provide the employees with the tools to
Exactly,
utilize
well-
it properly.
That's right. I mean, and that's partly what their support team is all about.
Good computers with
Right,
fast
exactly.
internet.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
that's
that's
what
what
I'm
you're
talking
saying.
about.
That
Okay.
kind of thing, yeah, sure.
And everything on this pretty much can be used from the cloud, right? Does this platform independent?
Absolutely.
That's a plus.
Yeah.
Don't have to worry about it on that one.
As you work into these other use cases as well, you mentioned, longer, medium term, it becomes more valuable. But I will say for the short term, which I consider the same year, so we're into, your fiscal and calendar 2019 year, we're at a point in the year that if we moved forward, we would expect you to be budgeting using OpenGov budgeting and workforce tools. And that is something I consider our core functionality, that there's no doubt that we'd have you up doing that part of it. So that's something where it's kind of one of those failures now, it doesn't come to mind from those parts of it. When you talk about time card tracking and that stuff, maybe it's a little bit of a longer run up, but you'd be budgeting with us this year.
Does anybody have any further questions? It's getting to be a little late. I bet you people's energy is kind of waning.
What do the little circles up there mean?
Yeah, and this was going back to the kind of the network mentality, is this is just one other thing you can always, this doesn't represent every single OpenGov customer, but it kind of gives you, it's a great way to get
Pretty
quick
prevalent in the
ideas.
Midwest.
You could start to drill into different areas, so, we'll see up here, and what you can start to do is look at some of the other reports other folks are doing, and what are they releasing out to the community. So it's a good way you can get an idea of what other folks are releasing.
And
out
that's
to the
on your
community.
website.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's actually,
Population
it's,
37.
Yeah, it's in the platform.
It's in the platform.
One of the tabs.
Oh, I see.
If you go back out to the bigger.
Oh, there
So
you
If you ever
go.
wanted to, look at what a similar 55 million operating budget city in New Mexico or Colorado or California was doing, all of your benchmarking comparison is done right to the platform.
That's helpful.
Richard had a question.
Just gonna say, if you're gonna get 900 more customers this year, are we one of the hardest sells you?
I've got some more stories.
No, this has been pretty enjoyable, so.
Yeah, use cases are very strong, very much right in line with where we do well with customers.
How about Abingdon, Virginia? I see that on the left
Oh,
there.
yes.
What are they doing?
Oh, yeah. So
A
that's-
couple down
Oh, yes, Abby.
Abingdon.
Oh, yeah. Chuck Banner, finance director. Full budgeting suite there. They're in, you can't even really tell, but Virginia skinnies off right by Tennessee.
I grew up about 40 miles from there.
I
know that.
drive here from DC, now it took me about 6-7 hours.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
long stay.
Yeah. It's not the easiest place to get to, but Chuck is a huge open gov proponent.
Abingdon.
Yeah.
So they have an $86,000 general fund.
86
Less than
million.
half.
I'm sorry, 86 million.
For a population of
Look at
8,000
that.
people.
How do we compare for median household?
Wow. How do they do that?
Oh, they must be.
How do they get
With
that?
a median income household was less than 40,000.
Median household.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is not too much
How do they
different
raise
than
that?
us.
Right?
A little bit more.
So this'll-
Unemployment,
this'll-
good unemployment.
But the gross revenue is $10,000 per capita.
You know where Montgomery County right down there?
That doesn't make sense.
Montgomery County, Virginia?
Virginia has it.
No.
It's great.
If there was a city you know of in there.
Plattsburgh.
Oh, yeah, I know. Okay, yeah.
So
Is that a
Plattsburgh,
flag?
Open Gov customer, Montgomery County is
Uh-huh.
Open Gov customer as well.
University City, just like ours.
Close to our
Yeah.
household income, and our household is pretty low here.
Yeah.
Virginia Tech.
And this is student tax.
Are their taxes that high? 86 million against 8,000 population? I think that's gonna be a
Yeah,
high tax
something's
rate.
off there.
Yeah, that doesn't look right, does it?
Curious.
Unless it's an industrial center.
8 square miles.
Okay.
In our general fund budget's 23 million, 24 million, and we get 20,000 people, so.
Yeah, maybe this population,
And high
census
taxes.
population estimates 2012. This is directly from OpenGov, so that should be just right.
Yeah, our median income is about the same.
Go to,
Yeah, here, let's,
Well, we'll have to
We can
figure
have
out
lot of other revenue sources and tax.
Council, we'll have to figure out a
We'll
way
look
to
at the details. Let's
kind
do
of
that.
process all this
yeah,
together.
so there's Abilene.
Um,
Let's move it.
Figure out what the way forward is. But we certainly appreciate all the time and information you provided to us, and coming all the way up from Boston.
Population 117,000.
Thank you.
Well, it's been our pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Really looking forward to working with you.
We'll be in touch.
Awesome.
Yep. Thanks.
You guys headed back tonight, or?
Yeah.
It's not bad. A couple of hours. 3 hours.
I don't know what, by what process.
3.5, yeah. Once you get to the Vermont, New Hampshire border.
How do you do that, 3 at a time?
Yeah, take the ferry. The ferry to
Yeah, I don't-
89 to 93 is
That's
where it
exactly
gets
how
back.
we did it.
Yeah. Are you gonna wanna